What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court today being Wednesday, January 2nd. I, of course, am your host, Sean Murphy, and today I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the cardigan and the bun and cardigan, and the Pistons beat writer for The Athletic, my guy, James Edwards III, Flint's own James Edward III. James, how you doing, man? Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no, I'm doing well, Sean. Thank you for having me. Yeah, things are good. It's we're in the dog days of the season. I'm feeling it for sure. Ready for All-Star break just to get some downtime. But no, it's been good. This team has been very interesting in the year 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really good way to describe it. I mean, you've had quite a last couple of years covering the team with all the changeover, with the pandemic, with everything. By the way, before we get into everything, what was it like covering the team during the pandemic? I mean, obviously beat writers, you're used to traveling with the team, having to try and cover them from your home in your own bedroom. Like what is that experience like? I mean, compared to normal, how was that? Just surreal? Or
yeah, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. At first it was, I mean, obviously for the intensive purposes of the job, it was tough. I think I've said before, like, they changed the roster. Obviously Troy came in the summer of the pandemic and changed the roster completely. So at that point, I had been covering the team for 4 years, and by the start of the season, I had maybe only, I'm trying to think. By after the deadline, I think there's only one person I had met in person on the basketball team.
Oh, wow.
And it was Sekou. Can't remember if there was anybody else. I think it was just Sekou. So yeah, they changed the roster so much. I hadn't met anybody in person. Obviously, we talked to him through Zoom for most of the year, but it's still not the same.
Right.
Not traveling as much, like it caught up to me. Like at first it was cool, like you get to spend time with your family. I live with my girlfriend, so it was like you didn't think it would last that long, so it was kind of cool to like just catch up and be around. But as the season played out and it definitely looked like we weren't going to be back on the road, you get a little antsy, you get a little anxious, because we're so used to, we obviously don't play basketball, but I mean, we're pretty much on the same schedule as the players. So
yeah,
we went from kind of 100 to 0 really quick, from traveling every other day essentially to having somewhere to be to not having anywhere to be. So it was a lot to get adjusted to. And by the end of it, it was an adjustment to get back to normal for me, at least. So
yeah,
it was definitely a unique experience. Definitely hoping it never happens again for many reasons. And hopefully this is the end of what we've been going through for the last 3 years. Hopefully there's an end in sight.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, going from 100 to 0 and then back to 100 again had to have been quite the jolt.
It was, for sure.
Yeah, that's absolutely unreal. And you know, speaking of you know, that team and in going through all that they've gone through, James, like you said, it's been an interesting season. So much turnover, so much change, a lot's been different. If you had to describe like this season or this Pistons team in like one sentence, what would you say? How would you describe them?
Yeah, this Pistons season, excuse me, I'm just waking up. I haven't had my green tea. My throat's a little scratchy.
Oh, you're good, man.
In one sentence, I would say random as hell.
Yeah.
Random as hell. Just simply because, first and foremost, it's a young team, and there's games where they look like they're turning the corner, and there's games where they look like they took 3 steps back. Holy cow. I promise I'm not crying.
Oh no, you're good, man.
Like last night, who did they play last night?
The Pelicans.
Like last night against the Pelicans.
Yeah.
And then obviously they have good games like the ones against the Cavs. The season is just random, just with guys in and out of protocols. this is the first time that they've really had their whole group together.
Mm-hmm.
There's been games canceled, games rescheduled, and there's a sense of, I don't know, like there could be stuff happening at the deadline. Like it's clear that they have a plan and they're building towards something. It's just, it's such in the early stages that everything it feels very random. Anything can happen at any time. So that's where I'm at with it. I think it's been random in a good way, though. In a good way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think a lot of the random's been a lot of good and a lot of bad, to your point. Just I mean, I think the Kelly Olynyk injury especially hurt the team quite badly at the beginning of the season when we had a lack of size. And then, pretty much a week and a half after we lose Kelly, we lose Jeremy for a month and a half too. So anytime you have a young team like that, it's going to be difficult to win. However, I mean, I think the silver lining for any Pistons fan, it's not really a secret, has been Cade Cunningham and the number one pick and his play. And you've written quite a bit about Cade. I know at first you weren't quite sure about what his ceiling was. I know you were kind of a Mobley guy at the beginning of the draft process, but what have you seen from Cade that was different from maybe what maybe something you didn't expect watching him in college? And what do you think of his potential in the league?
Yeah, no, I was going back and forth for a long time on Cade and Mobley. Both guys I was confident would be really good players for a long time. So I didn't think the Pistons could go wrong.
Right.
And I think Cade, for me, the biggest thing that surprised me, and I was even more worried about it going into the season after we saw Summer League, is I just wondered if he'd be able to finish at the rim consistently. I think we've all talked about how he was kind of a quote unquote flawless prospect, which is why he went number one.
Right.
But I think if there was a knock on him, it was his lack of athleticism, lack of explosiveness. I thought that showed at times in college.
Yeah.
I thought it really showed in the Summer League.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really curious to see if he'd be able to finish at the rim, and would in turn, would he be able to shoot well enough to where it maybe doesn't matter as he figures out the NBA game. And I mean, he's finished pretty well at the rim. Finished in different ways, finished through contact, getting to the hole hasn't really been a problem for him. So everything else he's done, the scoring, the shooting, the defense, I expected. The turnovers, even I expected. He struggled with them in college, and he's a young ball handler who has a high usage, so you expect that number to be high, but I didn't expect him to finish as well at the rim as he has. And I think the sky's the limit for him. I wonder if, I think there's a world in which he's a top 15 player in this league one day.
Yeah.
Like I kind of feel confident about that. He's the real deal, and he's a good kid too. So it's been fun to cover him. It's been good just to have conversations with him and joke around in the free spaces that we do have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that was important for the Pistons. As good as Mobley is, not necessarily the personality that Cade is, doesn't necessarily have the public not know-how, but public what's the word I'm looking for?
He doesn't have that kind of that PR.
Yeah, the people. He's very much a people's person.
Yeah.
You could tell he was raised right. I think the Pistons needed a guy like that as they started the rebuild. They needed a face, a mascot, I like to call it. They needed that. And I think aside from what he does on the court, I think Cade checks all of those boxes off the court as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point, because to your point, I think, a lot of mock or a lot of redrafts, because the best time to do a redraft is 20 games after the season started, because that's when you can make a definitive judgment on players, right? Because that's how that works. Right. A lot of people are saying that Mobley should have gone first, but I think to your point, I think you can make the argument that obviously Mobley wouldn't be having nearly the same amount of success in Detroit. Arguably, just because, for one, the role for him in Cleveland is just perfect. And he would have been the only 7-foot guy in Cleveland. He's one of 5 or 4.
Yeah, right. In the starting lineup.
Yeah. That's just the starting lineup. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, speaking, just not to go too off track real quick. How about Cleveland, man? They have been they have been surprising to watch. I don't know about you, but I wasn't that high on Darius Garland. And I didn't think he could be that guy.
Yeah,
Um,
I definitely didn't think he could be that guy. You know what he kind of reminds me of, and Pistons fans, plug your ears. Kind of Spencer Dinwiddie
yeah.
in the sense that everybody kind of going into college, or even when he was going into college, and people were very high on him. How many alarms did I set? Gosh, I got like 50 alarms going off.
Oh, dude, I did the same thing. You're fine. I think we literally had one go off at the same
I
time
thought
earlier.
so. I
Yeah.
thought so. Um, yeah, with Garland though, like in college, I know he didn't play much because of the ACL, but people were really high on him.
Yeah.
So he probably, I mean, he still was a top 10 pick, but it was going to take a little bit for him to get going. And similar with Spencer Dinwiddie, obviously a little different situation. Spencer was a second round pick. But there were many people, if you talk to people in the league, like Spencer would have been a first round pick more than likely if he didn't have an ACL injury in college as well. So
Right.
now you're kind of just seeing the effects of Darius kind of being removed from that ACL injury, from getting comfortable with the NBA game, being the primary ball handler. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him. And Jared Allen is one of the best role players in the NBA. I got
Oh,
into
yeah.
this discussion on Twitter the other day. It's like, what defines a star and like a high end, and then what defines a high end role player? Like, yeah, Jared Allen's a borderline all-star, probably make it, but like he's a high end role player. He does his role as good as anybody in the NBA. And you need guys like that especially after you get the star. So I just really like what they're doing. They play hard. They got a pretty deep bench. They got guys like Dean Wade who have shown to be NBA players. Even Stevenson and they got guys and they play
Yeah.
hard. They're long. I'm very impressed with Cleveland.
Yeah. Even Kevin Love coming off the bench, having a little bit of a
Yeah,
little bit of a career resurgence,
yeah.
actually having a prominent role and playing well again.
You don't hear about him wanting to leave anymore, right?
Oh no! All of a sudden, he's talking about how happy he is and how much he
Yeah.
loves being around those young guys. Yeah, I think he's good. But yeah, speaking of old guys throughout the league, Chris Paul, 36, 37 years old,
Mm-hmm.
leading the Suns to an 11 game win streak. Are they your favorite in the West right now, personally, or what are you leaning right now? What are you seeing out there?
I need to show them the respect they deserve. They've been phenomenal. They're just about their business. To me, they're like the most professional basketball team out there.
Oh yeah,
Just the way they carry themselves and how much they're about their business. And Devin Booker has really just kind of morphed into a combination of what we loved about him and then Chris Paul. He's
yeah,
just very about his business. But with that said, I just love Steph too much.
yeah,
And I think once the Warriors get healthy, Draymond gets back, I'm still in the camp that if Wiseman plays, he helps them. Maybe I'm
yeah,
wrong. I know there's people that are iffy on Wiseman. I think at some point we're going to look up and he's going to be a really good player. Um, but what the Warriors are doing with Wiggins taking off, and I'm going to go with bless me. Holy, this is listeners. I'm sorry. I am not on my game. I'm over here, scratchy throat, alarms going off, sneezing in the mic.
Hey, James, even if you have a scratchy throat, you still have one of the best voices in basketball, man. So
Thank
dude,
you.
you are absolutely fine, man.
I
You know
hate my
your
voice,
stuff.
but that's a good self-esteem. Thank you.
No,
Um,
dude, you got a good podcast voice, genuinely. So
oh, good
yeah.
to know, because I always thought the opposite. I have my morning voice on now, so it's a little deeper, a little late night jazz radio station.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
now. The quiet storm voice. So as the day goes on, it gets a little different. But yeah, man, I'm gonna go with the Warriors. I think the Warriors get to the finals.
Yeah, that's fair. It's hard to doubt them. James Wiseman, to your point, and like, one of those young guys that that fans are counting out a little too quickly. Kind of shifting back to the Pistons a little bit. I mean, Killian Hayes is another young prospect, same draft class, similar issues dealing with health,
Mhm.
being on when he's been on the court, he's struggled a little bit shooting from the field.
Mhm.
What have you seen from Killian this season, and what is he like? Because I think of all the players on the team, he's probably the one I've seen do media probably the least, or probably I've seen the least personally.
Yeah.
So I don't really get to have the sense of what he's like. I mean, he's a pretty quiet guy too.
Mhm.
from my sense. So what's been your take on Killian this season, and what do you think Pistons fans should know about him that maybe we don't?
Yeah, I think there are been strides that have been shown. I think, especially as of late, he has been more aggressive in trying to attack the rim. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that's probably the top of fans' list when they want to see him make improvements.
Yeah.
Defensively, he's still been sound. Passing, of course, is his strong suit. I think the big thing for him is continuing to be aggressive, attacking the lane. And I think he'll have more space to operate now that he's with that second unit and it's a little more spaced out. The reason guys like Cade and Jeremy can kind of navigate with Stu roaming around is because they got a little more wiggle to their game.
Yeah.
They're a little more creative with their drives. Killian is more kind of just straight line drive. He's a little less wiggle, so to have the space for him is very important.
Yeah.
And I think you saw that last night against the Pelicans. He had some good drives. So as long as he continues to build on that, that's very important. And then him as his personality, nice kid. I would say he did do a lot of media his rookie year.
Yeah.
And obviously fans didn't get to see it necessarily because everything was on Zoom.
Yeah.
But when he was kind of like number 7 pick, the team was in every game playing hard. He was kind of the one that would come out and talk a lot. This year, it's a little different. I think part of it is the team. Clearly, he struggled this year, and I don't think the teams want to put him in position to answer certain questions.
For sure.
Or even, to be fair, not to say put him in position to not answer certain questions like they're hiding them, but I should say other players that perform better, and they usually when after games they usually bring out the top performers of the night.
Yeah.
And I've sat and talked with him one-on-one a few times. He's a nice kid, loves soccer. He is very quiet. I do think some of that is his personality. I do think some of it is trying to maybe feeling uncomfortable with where he's at in his space right now in his career. Even though he's super young, and I hope he doesn't read some of the comments, but I assume he's young. I'm sure he sees some of them, but
For sure.
he is pretty quiet, pretty reserved. But when you go up and talk to him, he is a nice kid and very polite. But yeah, he's a big soccer fan, as you'd expect from somebody who grew up in France.
For sure. Yeah. And I think and to your point with how he's played since switching over, I think I personally thought that move was kind of around the corner. It seemed kind of imminent at the time.
Yep.
And so when that happened, I definitely wasn't surprised, but I've just been glad to see that, like, that Dwayne has said that, or Coach Casey has said that he's been happy with the role change, that he's kind of embraced it. And I think, and that's just good to hear that, he's, just keeping at it and he's attacking more. I think, to your point, attacking the rim has kind of been my thing with him too. There's just times where, like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's times where he attacks the rim and he just contorts his body really weird.
Yeah,
does
fades
something.
away.
Yeah, exactly.
I wrote a story on it. Yeah, I pulled some clips and I was like, he's so big. He's just got to put his body into people. If he misses, he misses, but at least there's a chance for, like, you're giving yourself the best chance to get points in some way or the other.
Yeah, that's exactly. And with his frame, he can be a really good finisher at the rim. He can be, he can draw fouls. He can be a pest for a lot of guys.
He's a big kid.
There.
I think people might not realize if you see him in person, he's bigger in person even than he is on TV.
Yeah.
He's solid. Like he's got some muscles to him aside from just being 6'5". He's got some build to him.
Yeah, he's got a great build to him. So, like, I think that's, I can see why, like, when Troy Weaver drafted him, obviously everyone, whenever they see a left-handed guy that does a step back, they think it's James Harden. But Dwayne Casey, he liked to compare him more to like a Goran Dragic, which I can definitely see that at his peak. I mean, he defends really well. He has shown abilities or aspects of being able to score. Speaking of Coach Casey, another polarizing topic in the Pistons community. I don't know, that's not much of a secret. I personally am a pro Casey guy. I love what he's developing, what he's doing in Detroit. I kind of asked Rod. I was able to talk with Rod Beard recently too,
Hmm.
and I kind of asked the same, like a similar question, but like, what do you think is the sense of the franchise's attitude towards Coach Casey, and what do you think fans don't get to see about him or don't know about him that helps this team do what they're doing right now? Because I think personally, I think Dwayne Casey's really good with young players. I think he's shown he has a history of developing young talent.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen a lot of guys on this team get better as the season has progressed.
Hmm.
What have you seen from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the franchise is in support of him.
Yeah,
Clearly, I think that extension that he got, I think was it last year, shows that, and I also think they almost like felt bad that he came here to try to win, and they pivoted. And I mean, he co-signed the pivot and agreed that it needed to happen, but he did come here to try to win.
yeah,
And now you have this veteran coach who has had success in the NBA. His overall record isn't looking great because of that. Not that he cares, I'm sure,
right.
but just you could see how the ownership and front office wanted to reward him for being obviously, I hate using this word, but a soldier and leading this team and trying to get it to a new phase and a new era.
Yeah,
I think one thing fans don't see is the players' response to him. I wrote a story recently about Isaiah Stewart kind of being a student of the game, and
yeah.
one thing
Great
I
read, by
talked.
the way.
Thank you. I talked to him. I talked to Dwayne about just kind of how much like Isaiah, like you can, if you just watch a Pistons game, if you're at the arena, which Sean, we met recently, I know you've been to some games.
Yeah,
I recommend people when you see Isaiah Stewart on the floor, like watch him and Dwayne Casey interact. Isaiah always goes up to him, kind of puts his arm around him, looks him in the eye when he needs to learn something or messed up on something. Um, it's certainly like there are players play hard for him, and I know
yeah,
there are a lot of people who are have their critiques of the X's and O's or whatever that may be. I definitely think Dwayne Casey has an offense that works better for veteran players because it's so much read and react, and young players make
right.
so many mistakes. I mean, it's the same offense that they ran in Toronto
Yep.
that proved good results. This is pretty much the same offense that the Raptors are running now with Nick Nurse with some tweaks.
Yeah.
Um, it's good offense. I just think it's more crafted toward veteran players, and eventually you want to get these guys to be able to play a little bit more read and react and to play with movement and to move naturally. And it might look ugly now, but I mean, their hope is it pays off in the long run. Um, but yeah, I think he's a guy who players play hard for him. And I know everybody talks about the X's and O's, and that's what generates a good coach in this league. To me, in the NBA, I think if you get your players to buy in when the wins are not coming, and
Yeah.
you get players to play hard for you when the wins are not coming, that is as important as any X's and O's. Like
Amen.
you guys know that there are teams who will just kneel down and give up in games. There are teams who they might have a coach that's a great X and O's guy, but he's not a great people person. Um, Dwayne, I think the most important thing at this level, particularly for young guys, is to have a coach that the players will play hard for, that the players respect, because as you guys know, like playing hard can win you a few games you're not supposed to win.
Yeah.
The talent and the development that'll come, but playing hard will get you some wins that you more than likely weren't supposed to get. So I always kind of subscribe to that. I just think that at this stage of the Pistons development, instilling kind of that culture of playing hard, listening, learning. They do a good job of getting guys who are receptive to coaching, of getting guys who do just naturally play hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll pay off one day. I really do.
Yeah, I think so too. And that was just the only way I could say that was just straight bars. You're just preaching right there. But but no, yeah, 100%. To your point, when a team goes out there and they compete each and every night, even against tough teams, even after they get blown out, whatever happens, as long as they're responding and listening. And I think a lot of fans made a lot of the Hamidou Diallo situation earlier in the
Yeah.
season when he had that when they had that interaction in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
What have been your thoughts of Hamidou's development this season and the role that he's played? And do you think the Pistons can expect him to be someone that's in Detroit for a while, or do you think
Yeah.
he's just someone that's here while we're rebuilding?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I think Hamidou is the biggest development Hamidou has shown this year is doing what Hamidou does best more.
Yeah,
Um, Being aggressive on the drives. When guys are slow to close out because they don't respect the three, attacking the closeout hard. Nobody can jump with them. Nobody can run with them.
yep,
I think the New Orleans game was a perfect example. They were hiding Valanciunas on him. Of course, Valanciunas was slow to get out, and Hamidou just went past him. They just didn't have an answer for his athleticism. I think he's doing that more and more. Um, I think defensively he needs to he can be he's has potential on ball, off ball. He needs to get a little bit better. I've always said like he's a jump shot away from being a legitimate starter.
yep,
And that's not even like he needs to shoot a bunch of them. He just needs to, if he can make the open ones at like 35%, that changes everything for him.
exactly. Yeah,
So I'm curious to see what his future is in Detroit. I do think that they like him and want to keep him around. But I wonder if he continues to play like this, will it be harder to do so? They got obviously the backcourt is interesting in Detroit. They got Cade, you got Sadiq in a way. I mean, you can include him in the front court too, I guess, depending on what happens with Jeremy. Just the wing rotation is interesting. I could definitely see some teams going after him when his deal is up. Yeah, I'd just be very curious to see. I think they're going to try to keep him, just how I feel right now, because he is getting
yeah,
better. But you never know how these things play out.
yeah. Especially on how good of a deal they got him on too. And
Exactly.
I think just such a low risk, high reward situation with his play and with what he brings to the table. I've loved watching him play this year. And
Yeah.
as we're kind of getting towards the end of our session a little bit, speaking of Jeremy, he's kind of the $1 million question in
Mm-hmm.
Detroit right now, as far as what his not necessarily fate, but like where what's going to happen with him. I mean, obviously I know Troy Weaver didn't go in the year expecting to trade Jeremy Grant or even wanting to trade Jeremy Grant, but I know the offers have been not the offers, but the interest has been really high.
Mm-hmm.
What's the latest sense that you're getting from that situation with Jeremy? I know there's a lot of different reports, a lot of conflicting reports that have come out over the
Yeah.
past couple of weeks. And what do you think think's the sense of what Detroit's looking to do at the deadline in general?
Yeah, I think Jeremy's an interesting case. I think obviously him and Troy have a great relationship. There's
Yep.
respect there for one another. Jeremy, I think this needs to be said because it hasn't. There might be people might, just based on all the trade stuff that's come out. Jeremy likes Detroit. Jeremy likes being here. He obviously is nearing a possibility for an extension. So I mean, I'm always for the player, like you got to make as much money while you're playing as you can because it can
Yeah.
go away at any point. So that's where kind of the conundrum is. Do the Pistons want to extend him? Does Jeremy want to take less than what he can get from somewhere else? Like that's where the conundrum is. There's no
Yeah.
bad blood or anything. I think it's just strictly business.
Yeah.
Which I respect. Like I said, if I was a player like Jeremy, like you got to get as much money as you can while you play.
100%.
So I think I'm very interested to see what happens in this next 8 days. Me and John Hollinger just dropped a piece where we both kind of, everybody, like you said, there's rumors out there that he's going to get traded. Me and John kind of like, we've heard that that's not necessarily the case, that it happens by the deadline. I think the Pistons are clearly headed for a top 5 pick. I think that could really dictate what happens with Jeremy down the line.
For sure.
If they pick 1 through 3 and end up with a 4, whether it's Paolo or a big man, whether it's Paolo, Chet, Jabari Smith, then maybe you see them navigate and move Jeremy in the summer. If they end up picking 5, 6, 7, and they end up with a wing, well, it's like Jeremy's a good player. You pair a Benedict Mathurin with a Cade and a Sadiq and a Jeremy and a Stu, like it's a fun team. You sign a free agent. If you want to wait till next year's free agency when it's a little bit better, you can do that. I think the draft is of the utmost importance for the Pistons right now.
Yes.
In terms of them going forward and building. I think Jeremy, I think there will be some, I wonder if there will be consideration if the Pistons do trade him at the deadline, where he's going. Say the Sacramento offers lottery protected first, player X, player Y, or whatever. Jeremy doesn't want to go to Sacramento. Does Detroit maybe just hold off and see if there's something in the summer that benefits both parties? Like, I think there's enough respect there, that will happen. But yeah, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's traded at the deadline. As we get closer, I would before the last few weeks, I was saying it was like 55-45 he would get traded. Now I'm like at dead 50-50. So
yeah,
just based on conversations with people I've had and talking to people around the league and all that stuff. I'm not as sold as I once was.
Yeah. And I personally, I'm with you right there. I've after some of the deadline madness I've seen over the last few years, I've kind of stopped trying to guess what's going to happen because
it's impossible.
100%, because anything can happen at any given time. And so,
like the Pistons getting Blake Griffin on a random Tuesday in February.
I remember that day vividly because I was working at a hospital and I just felt my phone buzz. I literally thought like something went down or something bad happened, and I check and it's like, oh, this guy's joining my team now. That's that'll always be one of the weirdest days. That was bizarre.
Super.
James, one last question before I do let you go. I'm curious. We get to see your writing and coverage of the game of basketball quite a bit. Obviously, you don't really get to be a fan of a team as much. You're really more so covering the game.
Yeah.
But as like a fan of the game, like what are some of your favorite hoop memories? Like what are some of the things that like you think back on that like what made you fall in love with the game of basketball?
Yeah, great question. Jason Williams, White Chocolate.
Oh yeah.
Just the creativeness, he brought what we grew up on, like playing in the playground to the boardroom. I like to say, like,
yeah,
he brought the essence of basketball to a professional level, and he was just so much fun to watch. And I'd spent many hours trying to master many Jason Williams passes. So shout out to White Chocolate. Sean Livingston, who was a guy that grew up in Illinois, not too far away. I grew up a Michigan State fan. People were comparing him to Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
Obviously had a devastating injury. Like, I was heartbroken as like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old when that happened, and his leg is leaning the whole other way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
T-Mac, I mean, I'll never forget being in my dad's basement when he dunked on Sean Bradley. I'll never forget. I mean, Penny, Kobe shot against Phoenix and he pulls the chest, his jersey to show his heart.
Oh man.
Steph in the Garden, hitting a three and then kind of wiggling his way down to the other end of the court. Dan Marley was another guy I really liked growing up. Grant Hill, Jason Kidd.
Oh man.
Yeah, man. I just late 90s, early 2000s basketball. Like, it was just being a kid and like falling in love with it. It was nothing better. The jerseys were cool. Like, those Sacramento Kings teams were so much fun.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's I love being able to like be around it. Like, essentially, like I always tell my friends, like, I'm in the league. Like, I'm essentially in the league. So it's cool to like see how it works and see guys like Brandon Ingram up close and personal. I love Brandon Ingram's game. Like, when he's cooking, there are very few guys that are fun to watch. Guys like Tyrese Halliburton, just I've had a chance to talk to him. Nice kid, good to see his success. Desmond Bain, I interviewed for a story before the draft. Great kid, happy to see his success. So it's kind of cool. Like, you're now invested in like, oh, this is a nice guy. I hope it works out for him. Like, I met him. He's a cool kid. I hope his career goes well. Like, so it's pretty cool from that perspective. Definitely.
Yeah. You got fits like you're in the league too, by the way. You got the best fits of reporter going into games. My goodness.
Listen, we were cooped up for a year. I had to, I was sitting on nothing. I was sitting here wearing sweats in a white tee for 8 months. It was time to get dressed up a little bit.
Oh, I'm not judging you.
No, I know.
You stepped your game up, man. It was impressive.
Thank you.
Always love checking the fits, but seriously, James, thank you so much for coming on, man. I know you I know you have things going on and you're a busy man, but people can follow you on at JL Edwards III on Twitter.
Yep.
They can catch you on the Bun and Cardigan show with my guy Nick Henkel.
Yep.
Our guy Nick Henkel.
Yes.
Yes.
Shout out to Nick.
Yeah, 100%. And also be sure to subscribe to The Athletic and read James' words. It is his writing, his work is always really good, and you can always count. You and Rod are the guys. If I don't hear something from you, I generally don't trust it. So,
I appreciate that, man.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely, man. So seriously, dude, thank you so much for coming on, and this was a pleasure.
No, appreciate you having me on. Good to chop it up. We yeah, like I said, we met a few weeks ago. You called me Jalen.
Yeah.
No, but it was an accident and it was funny. And no, it's good to do this anytime. And next time you're at a game, let me know and I'll come say hello.
Oh, absolutely, man. We'll definitely have to chop it up next time for sure.
For sure, man. Thanks again.
Absolutely, man. I want to thank you all so much for listening. We'll catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.